Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week, Woogity, I can barely do that. I am discussing Rocket Power, created by Arlene, Klasky, and Gábor, Csupó. It's so interesting because I was never particularly excited when this show was on, like watching it as a kid at the time it was airing. However, I also liked it enough to never change the channel when it was on. Like, I was basically just a casual viewer, and I had the same opinion of The Wild Thornberrys, which I talked about in this podcast a few years ago. Both of those Nicktoons were just kind of middle of the road for me. That said, with that show and with this one as well now, I have such a newfound, deeper appreciation than I ever did as a kid watching this show at the time because, frankly, the plain and simple reason I wasn't a fan, not that I wasn't a fan, but again, just like a casual viewer of Rocket Power, is the simple fact that I've never been big into sports. I dabbled in sports here and there growing up, but I can't relate to these kids who are so into skating and surfing and hockey and, all their cool stuff they like to do. But what I love now, having rewatched a bunch of episodes, I love the writing, first and foremost. I love the fact that the characters feel so realistic and so grounded in reality to the point where they feel like kids who could exist in our world. And that truly is the staple of Klasky Csupó shows, of the slice of life storytelling, complete also with kind of the wonky art style. But the art style in this show, I think, holds up really well. And also it stays consistent throughout the entire run. And what made me want to revisit this show now, because frankly, I never felt compelled to do so in all these years since the series has been on the air. But what made me want to revisit it, seemingly out of nowhere, was actually two things that caught my interest. One was that I saw, in fact, Tony Hawk share a clip on Instagram. He had posted a clip on Instagram of his cameo on Rocket Power. And I thought to myself, wait, Tony Hawk guested on Rocket Power? And then I was watching and I was like, oh gosh, I vaguely remember this. And of course, no duh that he, had a cameo spot, because he's arguably he is one of the most famous pro skaters of all time. So it makes sense that he is one of Otto Rocket's idols. And then, of course, he's shredding with him, his idol. It's so cute. The other thing, though, that I saw was on Twitter, one of the voice actors for Squid, Gary Leroy Gray, in honor of the 25th anniversary, he said, wow, it's the 25th anniversary of the debut of my very first VO character. First off, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing that is his first ever voiceover role. But also, he went on to then voice AJ in The Fairly Odd Parents, so that's really cool. And then I was like, wait, Rocket Power premiered 25 years ago? And sure enough, it premiered back on August 16th, 1999. So this Nicktoon premiered the same year as Spring Boob Squarepants, just kidding, SpongeBob SquarePants. So isn't that just wild to think? Let's just take a moment and reflect that SpongeBob and Rocket Power premiered the same year, and one went on to be a global phenomenon, and this one just kind of came and went. It finished its run on July 30th, 2004, total of 71 episodes, 4 seasons. So it had a solid run. It went a little bit further than a typical standard run of a Nicktoon with the 60 episodes. And it's interesting because it did have the 3 seasons, 60 episodes, but then I guess there was just one more season with just a few more episodes to finish out the run of the show. And I'm genuinely amazed how little I remembered of this show. The main stuff I remember was just the premise of the 4 friends who love to skateboard and surf and bike ride and, play hockey and do all of this fun stuff in their daily lives. And then, of course, I remembered Raymundo and Tito, but that's about it. Outside of that, I was amazed how little I remembered. I wouldn't have been able to recite a line of dialogue other than the woogity, 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 woogity. Oh, I did it now. If you don't think about it, it just comes, that's so fun. I did the hand wiggle. That made the difference. Okay, I'm just having a moment with myself. The hand wiggle, woogity, 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 because, the classic handshake. Every time they did that was the one thing that filled me with pure nostalgia. My face just lit up every time because they do it quite a lot throughout the show. Any combination of the four main characters. And what I will say, so of course our four main characters, Otto Rocket, his older sister Reggie Rocket, his best friends Twister Rodriguez, and then the new kid Sam Dullard, aka Squid. That interesting thing I learned about having four main characters in a show is that is the magic number for shows about close friends. Case in point, Seinfeld, The Awesome Foursome. Case in point, South Park. Case in point, Rugrats. Of course, the original run of Rugrats, that is. Tommy, Chucky, Phil, and Lil, you know? So then, of course, this one, Otto, Reg, Twister, and Squid. The main things I remembered really is that I do remember watching this show with my brother and sister because we loved Squid. We loved the name Squid particularly. We'd be like, oh, you're Squid, he's Squid, she's Squid, I'm Squid, you know? Like, yeah, you're Squid. And then we also loved Raymundo. We'd be like, sup, Raymundo. Like, we loved the name Raymundo because that's a cool name, Raymundo Rocket. And, like, I did remember distinctly that Reggie and Otto would call their dad Raymundo. But I thought they only exclusively called him that. But in fact, they do call him Dad from time to time as well. But still, it's like an Atticus Finch situation. You know, Atticus from To Kill a Mockingbird, where his kids, the main character, Scout, and her older brother, Jem, would call him Atticus. And it's just kind of like, just one of those unique things. I don't know. It's kind of, because what really jumped out at me first and foremost is that Raymundo is an incredible dad. Because he gives them their autonomy, but then also he rightfully is strict with them when he needs to be. And so he's just like a wonderful parent. So I'm going to go ahead and say he's up there with, not quite at the pinnacle in terms of Klasky Csupó series anyway. At the pinnacle, without a doubt, is Lois Foutley from As Told by Ginger. But I would say Ray Rocket is second. He's a wonderful, wonderful father. And the other thing I remembered, of course, is Tito with his ancient Hawaiian proverbs. And what I appreciate about Tito now is that he's another fatherly figure for the kids. And it's so cute. He calls them little cousins, little rocket cuz, little twister cuz. It's very adorable to me. It's so sweet because the stuff that really resonated with me watching this, it made me laugh a lot first and foremost, but it also, I got a little teary-eyed here and there, which I was not expecting at all. And again, what I really love is how real the characters feel. But there were certain emotional moments, one of which, with Tito in particular, is when he's feeling homesick and then they cheer him up with a luau because he's missing Hawaii. And then Reggie is talking to him and she says, some families have a mom and a dad or a brother and a sister, but I have something extra. I have a Tito. And Tito says, and I have a Reggie. And I was like, oh my God, stop. Even Tito with Sam, for example, because with Sam, so he moves in the first episode. He's the new kid. And it's funny, in the first episode, I did remember this too, that Reggie and Otto, were calling Twister Squid. And he's like, stop calling me Squid. And poor Twister. I just got to say, I love Twister. I remember as a kid, he was my favorite character. He's still my favorite character. He's absolutely hilarious. He has so many funny moments, but somehow I seems to have completely forgotten how delightfully dumb and naive he is. Oh gosh, poor Twister. But so then it's sweet how then with Sam as the new kid, he quickly becomes Squid. And I also misremembered how little really they call him Squid. They really mostly call him Sammy. Twister kind of calls him Squid more because then he's not the Squid anymore. Squid's the new Squid, so now Twister's not Squid, okay? I guess gotta say, the nicknames in this show are second to none. I love the nicknames, but because Twister, his real name is Maurice, and they tease him about that, especially his older brother Lars, who is the absolute worst. But I mean, really, the name Maurice isn't so bad. It's just because Twister doesn't like his name, and even Reggie sometimes can it Maurice, just teasing him. They kind of have their own brother-sister dynamic too, Reggie and Twist, but it's just really funny. But so what I appreciate about Sam in particular is that since he's a new kid and since he's new in town, because him and his mom have just moved from Kansas to now Ocean Shores, California, this fictional town in California, that his role in the show is representing every single person who's not the best at sports, not so athletically inclined, that like he's kind of just not as skilled, frankly, as his friends. But what matters is that he still tries and he still has fun. And he does have moments where he shines, in particular in that first episode when you learn that he is just naturally an amazing goalie. So that becomes his key part when they play hockey in particular. So of course he has his strong suits as well. And then slowly but surely he does improve, and like he's always excited when like he does a new trick or something, or like when he is able to learn how to surf then, because first he keeps face planting over and over. And that is then a sweet moment with Tito, what I was talking about before in terms of Tito as a fatherly figure. That like when he keeps nose diving, he can't like find his balance on his board. And then Tito talks about how he had the same problem when he was a kid, and that his father had given him this bigger board. That's what he needed. And so then Tito passes the board down to Sam. And then Sam's able to surf. And it's just so cute. And they're all cheering him on. And I just find it so wholesome and so adorable. And so with Sam, with his mom then, I remembered then, like, his dad's not really around. And then there's that one episode when he shows up and Sam is all excited to hang out with him. But then his dad is unfortunately not being present with his son. And he's just on his phone all the time, very businessy, much like Charlotte Pickles from Rugrats, except for the one amazing moment in the Rugrats movie when she just tosses her cell phone over the bridge. That's a fantastic moment, but just like, screw that, I'm with my family, you know? But same thing here, he's like kind of just unintentionally ignoring Sam because he's just too busy working. And then also Sam isn't getting to spend one-on-one time with his dad because, like, you know, he invited the friends along too, and like they're just having a fun time. And then afterward, he just gives the gift he had made his dad at the hotel he's staying at. And then it's like a car he made, and it's like too big guy from little guy. And then he pulls up in his car and says, "This is really great, Sam. I love it. You know what I'd like to do now? What? Whatever you want to do." And then they're just driving, laughing, and then the phone's ringing and they're just like ignoring it. And he's just like, "Nope, I'm here with my son." So that got me a little misty-eyed. I was like, oh, there you go. Really sweet. So I appreciate how they kind of show these different family dynamics in this show, because I'm telling you, I forgot so many details about it. Like I forgot, for example, that they live on a cul-de-sac. Like it's Otto and Reg, and then like Twister's across, and then like Sam's right. The Sam I just moved in too. So I was like, oh, there you go, like a cul-de-sac, because this show did a little bit remind me of Ed and Nettie in that sense, because they live on a cul-de-sac, and also because in that show it's like perpetually summer, except for the last season when then they had stories at school. And with this show, it's perpetually summer because it's in California, but I mean, they do go to school from time to time, but it's just, that's not what the show's about. It's focusing on their sporting activities. So it's too funny. And so even though, like, I was never big into all of these sports like they are, like the main characters are, what I truly appreciate, like, especially with Otto in particular, because with the other three characters, like the three main characters, like even though, like, honestly, like I keep saying the main, like the four main characters, of course, but like even as a kid, I always thought of Otto as the protagonist, kind of like in Rugrats, where even though it's like the four babies, you just think of Tommy as the protagonist, you know? But so with Reggie, for example, like she's a great character too, because she's just like, it's the three guys and then the one girl, and yet that doesn't matter. She just shreds as good as them, like sometimes even better. And I really appreciate like how much they cheer each other on, Reggie and Otto in particular, because that's what really stood out to me is their brother-sister relationship. But with like their other interests, you got Reggie with her zine, I remembered that, and then of course Sammy's into computers and math because he does really well in school. And then Twister, I always remembered, he's got the video camera, he's like the videographer, always filming everything, so that's really great too. So I appreciate that they have other passions and hobbies outside of all of their extreme sports, except for really Otto. Otto, like, that's his life. He lives, breathes, everything sports, all things sports every day, to the point where I really believe, like, to me, it just seemed like the next logical thing, if make how these characters feel so real. To me, it just seems inevitable that Otto grows up to become a famous athlete and like maybe even competes in the Olympics someday and, just become the pro skater too, like his idols, like Tony Hawk, like Shaun White. Like, there's a few actually pro skaters that make cameos on this show, which is cool. And that's what I truly now, like watching this, that's what I admire about Otto, the character, like his passion, drive, and dedication, to the point where then, of course, like then he kind of messes up from time to time because his, he lets his interests take over, and then he sometimes disappoints Raymundo, and then Raymundo has no choice but to ground him. Like there's that episode where he wants to like compete in some skate contest, but then Ray tells him and Reggie that he needs them at the Shore Shack. And that's another thing too, the fact that with the Shore Shack that, Ray runs with Tito as the line cook, that a little bit reminded me actually of Bob's Burgers, with the restaurant. But anyway, so with that episode, like Otto begs Reggie to cover for him, and then she does, but then of course Ray finds out anyway, and then like he's disappointed in Otto, but then he says, well, I'll let you finish the competition and we'll discuss your punishment later. And then afterward, like at the end, they're like, washing dishes, and then he's like, hey, watch the hardware, and then like you see the trophy, the Sudsy trophy. I was like, that's really cute. So I appreciate so much like how much Reggie looks out for Otto and vice versa, because honestly, like that relationship to me is like the sweetest thing. That just really, for me, kind of was like, oh my god, this is way cuter than I ever would have remembered, because obviously I know like they always hang out with like the four of them, Reggie, Otto, Twister, and Sam, but just their relationship, Otto and Reggie in particular, as brother and sister, because they have so many similar interests, obviously with all of these extreme sports, yet also they're really similar in a lot of ways in terms of being really competitive and like really stubborn at times. But then there's really sweet moments where, and like it's never competitive to the point where like Otto never looks down on Reggie in terms of, oh yeah, like real good for a girl, it's never anything like that, thankfully. It's just like game respects game. It's kind of like that with them, because there's that episode where she wants to compete in the triathlon, and so they're all helping her train, and then like it's raining, so she can't compete, like she can't practice, and so then like they're in the kitchen, and then Otto is making a sundae. I remembered that scene because I remembered like the visuals, like all the ice cream making a huge mess, and then like she freaks out because she knows Raymundo's gonna kill them, so then she she just goes out the window, and then of course they see the like handprints, but like Raymundo waits for her to confess, but then like she starts to feel guilty, but Otto covers for her, and he's like, yeah, it was me and Twist, and so he takes the heat, and then Twist is like, why'd you do that? And then Otto's like, come on, man, she's been practicing all this like for so long, let her do the triathlon. And then that's just so funny too, like when they're grounded and then like they're both outside, like, at their homes talking to each other from across the way in the cul-de-sac, and Twister says, oh man, I'm so bored. And Otto says, how long have you been up? 4 minutes. Poor Twister. Oh my gosh. But then like when the irony, like when Reggie does go to compete, then like she feels guilty, and then she returns home and says, Dad, Otto was covering for me, and then like he says, I'm proud of you, but like you're still in trouble too, So it's really sweet how like they look out for each other. I just think it's very, really endearing, and that they just truly honestly get along. There's like less sibling rivalry and more like friendly competitiveness with them. And it's just really, I don't know, it's really wholesome. There's also that episode where Reggie is stressing herself out because she wants to join, she's like trying to be part of the volleyball team, and then also still be on the hockey, like play hockey with her brother and their friends. And then like she's unable to like do both successfully, so like she's stressing herself out, and then it's either like having to choose one or the other. But then Otto finds a way to postpone the game, and he's like, I got the game postponed, so you can go, like their hockey game, so then she can go compete with her volleyball team. And then she's like, Rocket Boy, you're the best. And he like he's like chuckles. He's like, yeah, I know. Like, it's very cute. It's just very adorable. I love how they call each other Rocket Boy and Rocket Girl. And then again, like, he's cheering her on in the end. So I find that so sweet, like when just the friends all come together cheering each other on. Like, they do that for Reggie, they do that for Sam, of course, because the dynamic too is interesting with Reggie and Sam, for example, because she kind of looks out for Sam when he can't always stand up for himself. Like, she's kind of more sensitive toward him, whereas Twister and Otto sometimes kind of tease him and stuff. Like, there's that episode when they're both just kind of, it's like very, you know, like the two of them kind of like just being like annoying little brothers in a way of making fun of Reggie and stuff. And then she gets so annoyed and then she puts their like secrets, like all their embarrassing stories into her zine. And then Sam accidentally, like unknowingly, he publishes it, not knowing that. And then she's like, oh man, like then they're getting like made fun of. And then afterward, Otto and Twister are both like, well, we don't really think you're a lame-o. And she's like, I know, I'm sorry, and whatever. So it's, I don't know, it's really sweet. And like all the lingo on this show is fantastic. Because I did remember also the like graphics that would pop up, like, uh-oh, or, you know, sick, or whatever. Like just like the graphics that would pop up with the words. Because like this show really, though, coined the phrase shoobies. I distinctly remembered shoobies because I remember as a kid, like when we went on vacation, we'd be like, oh, there's a shoobie, a real life shoobie. And, you know, like when Sam asks, what's a shoobie? And then like just saying, oh, it's like, you know, showing with the wearing the socks and shoes, socks and sandals with like what he's doing. Basically just a funny way of saying a tourist, you know, like a dorky tourist. But like, that's just such a funny phrase. Oh my gosh, shoobie. That and the woogity, I'm telling you, that's iconic. But that's so funny. And what's also hilarious is, like, outside of the four main friends and Ray and Tito, I'm amazed how I didn't remember really any of the recurring characters. I did sort of remember Merv and Violet Stimpleton. I remembered them because, like, they're the next door neighbors, and Merv is, like, the curmudgeon character, and Violet is, like, the really happy, sweet lady, and she's kind of like a motherly figure to Reggie a little bit. Like there's that episode where some guy wants to do a cover story about Otto as an up-and-coming surfer, and then Otto's like, oh, what about my sister too? And then the guy's like, nah, not girl surfers. And so then like they do a movement of proving that it doesn't matter if you're a girl, if you can surf, you can surf, and Violet helps organize it. And Sam does too, and like I remembered all that too, like all the visuals of the weird seafood that she made. And he's like, oh, do I have to wait because like I'm not a girl? And then she's like, oh no, dig in. And it's really cute. And so then like at the end when they're taking a photo, then Reggie just pulls Mrs. Stimpleton into the photo. So it's like she's low-key a badass. It's very sweet. I love nice stuff like that of like people coming together to help each other. Also, when they had, like, accidentally destroyed her violets, and then they feel bad because she had won every year. So then they make it up to her by then winning a new trophy for her with, like, the kart racing and stuff. But then it's just really sweet. Another character I completely forgot about was Mackenzie. That little 5-year-old girl was just a total menace to society. I was like, oh, my God, this little brat. But then she's also low-key a badass in a way too, because she's like a combination of Angelica Pickles and Louise Belcher from Bob's Burgers, but specifically early seasons Louise Belcher, when she has more of that unhinged, evil, chaotic side to her. But Mackenzie's so funny, like one of her first lines is, this party stinks on ice, and that's like a recurring line too, stinks on ice. So funny. But one part in particular that made me laugh with her is when her parents accidentally lose her on the boardwalk, and then Otto, Reg, Twist, and Sam are trying to help her find her parents. And like she causes all this chaos, and then when they all like come back together, and then Sam says, she punched out Lars and Toga Man. And then Otto just says, like in such excitement and joy, she punched out Lars? Cool! Like it made me burst out laughing. I was like, oh my gosh, like so excited to have Oh my gosh. I mean, you don't condone violence, but unless it's deserved because he's a total jerk, Lars. Like, I did remember Lars because, of course, he's the antagonistic older brother to Twister. And I'm really not a big fan of antagonistic older brother trope. It's just, like, so cringy and not nice at all. And I get it for the purpose of just having more conflict and kind of more of an underdog thing for Twister in particular, because poor Twister is just so naive and stuff. And for the most part, Lars is the absolute worst. But he has a couple of moments where he shows that he cares about Twister. One is the episode, like, when they're doing sandcastle competition. And then Mackenzie ends up winning just on technicality because she's the only one who built an actual sand castle. The rest of them was more like sand sculptures. But so Twist, Reggie, Otto, and Squid, they build a sand castle version of like the pier. So like they got the rides and they got the shore shack, and it's really cool. And then they're starting to freak out though because then the tide's coming in, so they're trying to like protect their creation. And then Twist goes to Lars to ask for help, and then Lars just kind of like laughs him off with his annoying, stupid friends. But then all of a sudden he just shows up. He's like, come on, we can help, like we can do it, and he helps them. So that was sweet. I was like, okay, that's nice. And they end up winning second place, and they're really stoked. And then the other like nice moment was when like, of course, he goes too far and like, you know, being mean to Twister, and then the mom tells him to like make it up to him. And then, like, they go off to that mountain place, whatever, and then they pretend, like, Twister then decides to pull a trick on Lars and pretends like he's lost. And then Lars starts freaking out, and he's like, oh, God, I gotta find Twister. I mean, just because it's more fun to be mean to him than it is to be nice doesn't mean I don't care about him. And then he's like, I wish I never, like, I guess I never realized how much and then, of course, Twister just shows up. He's like, oh, so you do love me. He's like, I never said that. He's like, well, let's look at the tape. So that was cute. I don't know, just some nice moments like that. But for the most part, though, he's mostly the worst. Gosh, it's like, nah, basically they have the opposite relationship of Otto and Reg, who actually like spending time with each other, which, again, I find really just really sweet. But another character I totally forgot about was Eddie, that little kid who's like, I'm Prince of the Netherworld. Me trying to do the voices, I know, cringe, but whatever, I'm having fun. But, you know, I was like, oh gosh, look at this little kid. He's got quite the imagination. He's too funny. But then also there was Oliver, who's like another character who's kind of like a mega nerd compared to Sam. And then even Sam's like, don't you like surfing and doing other stuff? But then, like, when they're kind of teasing him about it, but then he's like, oh, well, he is my new friend now. And then, like, they miss Sammy. And then, like, then he's like, well, I gotta, you know, plus my new friend Oliver, too. And then afterward, like, it's like, oh, Oliver, you want to play hockey with us? And he's like, oh, what will I get to do? And then they all just say, scorekeeper. That's too funny. And really just, like, the chemistry of those four characters, it plays out so well. They just feel like genuine long-time friends. You know, they're going to be in each other's lives forever. And what's funny is that, to me, this show feels like it could have been the perfect show because in hindsight, I feel like this show could have done better what All Grown Up was trying to do with Rugrats, like when they aged up the characters to try to get like an older audience. And because like the All Growed Up special, that 10-year special when they aged up the characters, did so well with Rugrats that they then ordered All Grown Up, the series, and it just kind of paled in comparison in every way to Rugrats because, frankly, just, you know, a whole different creative team and kind of watering down the characters to why you like them in the first place as, like, you know, babies, like, discovering the world and their sense of adventure. But this show, I feel like, could have done that so much. Like, it would have been so interesting to see aged up versions of Otto, Reggie, Twister, and Sam, like just age them up 5 years, so like they're teenagers in high school. And then you could have done stories with dating a little bit, and then them getting more into sports and like being on their high school teams and like doing varsity and possibly leading into what could be like the future of starting, perhaps for Otto, for example, like a, you know, actual professional skateboarding career, just stuff like that. Because it's funny because then I remember in All Grown Up, I was like, wait, that's so weird because they kind of borrowed things then from Rocket Power in return and from Rugrats, because in All Grown Up, I remember Tommy then like had the video camera, and also Dill kind of like has a similar personality to Twister because like being naive and stuff, except Dill was more of like a conspiracy theorist in All Grown Up. But whatever, I digress with that. But also, like, coincidentally, Shayna Fox, who voices Reggie, she also voiced the character Savannah in All Grown Up. I barely remember her. I think it was like Angelica's friend or something. But it just was interesting because this would have done so much better with aged up versions of the characters and just them getting more into their, like, excelling more at sports. Because I really think, honestly, like Otto would have gone on to become a professional athlete. There's just no doubt in my mind. I think Reggie then with her zine, maybe like she grows up to be a sports journalist and like touring around the world and highlighting different professional athletes while still having a passion for it herself. And I think Twister too, I think would become like a documentarian and probably doing a whole documentary about Otto's rise to fame, because really he's like Otto's biggest fan. Like them as best friends is so cute too. And then I think Sam would just go on to be like this really kick-ass computer genius, maybe invents cool technology that could help people with sports, like just other cool stuff. Because like even in the show, like there's an episode when he makes a whole computer game about him and his friends, but like it's this idealized version that he creates for himself where he's like the best player, and then he has like versions of his friend where we got Alo, who's like in love with himself. It's just like, playing into the tropes of the characters. And then Tweezer, who's like, can you help me find my surfboard? Like, help me find my shoes. And like, he's in a bathing suit and he's got his surfboard to ride down on, like, instead of a snowboard. And then when he sees, he's like, hey, I only did that one time. And then Reggie, she's Reginelda in the game. She's like, can you teach me how to ride like you? As if, like, she's not an expert at skating or anything. And then she's like, hey, I'm the one who taught you how to do everything. Like, so, them kind of like poking fun at themselves and stuff. Then he feels bad, of course. But then there's also like a part when it's like, you got lost in a story from one of Raymundo's 60s stories, because obviously Raymundo always kind of like living out his glory days about the times when he was younger with like him and Tito on the waves and stuff. So that's just really cute too. I don't know. But I can't really say I necessarily have like a favorite episode or anything either, because truly I feel that the quality of this show maintained from the first episode to the last episode in terms of the writing, the animation. I think it's all fantastic. Because I also misremembered, I could have sworn that this show went from traditional cell animation to digital ink and paint. But as it turns out, it was always in digital ink and paint. So the animation really honestly stayed the same, and the art style and everything. So I was just kind of impressed by that. I also misremembered, like I could have sworn then by the last season that Twister had like which he did, he had a different voice actor in the last season, but I thought it has like more of like a nasally voice. But I was kind of impressed. I was like, oh my gosh, they got like a really good voice sound alike. I could barely tell the difference with like the season 4 twist and the season 1 to 3, well, like early season Twister anyway, because by like season 3 then the voice actor's voice was changing, and then they incorporated that into the show with like the episode when he's wants to sing for Cinco de Mayo and they're kind of teasing him about that and like his voice is cracking. And then that made me wonder, though, because I was like, if his voice was already deeper then, because clearly it was, it's like more noticeable if you, as I was doing, I was binging. It's like his voice was deeper, and I was like, well, why did they recast him then if it already was deeper and incorporated into the show? Because another thing that jumped out at me, like with that in particular, was also Otto's voice. Then, like, I was watching season 1, then I jumped to an episode of season 4 that I know I hadn't seen, and like his voice was noticeably deeper, which like it's jarring at first, but then it's just like, oh, it sounds like Otto. And then also Sammy, he had 3 different voice actors throughout the show. It was Sam Saletta in season 1, Gary Leroy Gray in seasons 2 and 3, and then Sean Marquette in season 4. And actually that version of Sammy in season 4 kind of vaguely reminds me of Linus, that voice. And then I was like, oh, let me just like look up because I was curious. And then turns out Sean Marquette, he went on to voice Mac in Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then what I found interesting as well is that both Otto's voice actor, Joseph Ashton, and Reggie's voice actor, Shayna Fox, they both have long since retired from the industry. So I guess they probably went on to college and do other things in their lives. But great, awesome roles to go out on, though. Otto and Reggie, Rocket, like those are fantastic characters anyway to have voiced. But I just honestly was wondering, because since like the chemistry is there so much with these four, I'm sure they probably, like, I would have no way of knowing this unless asking one of them, honestly, but I wonder if they if they recorded together, and I'm sure they must have, because it just sounds too, at least with those four, because that's hard to, but who knows, maybe not, I don't know, but it seems that way, but who knows. Like, the voice acting, I found it really impressive, specifically with Otto in particular, because, like, for the most part, he's like, always super excited and, like, confident to the point of cockiness, and like that all comes through. But what stands out too with the voice acting in general, and with him in particular, is like sometimes when he has emotional moments and moments of like vulnerability, and moments also like those impact sounds and stuff, and like those whoa, yeah, like stuff like that, and like capture all of that joy and energy truly, and like it all comes through. Because also what I noticed is that the voice director for the show was Charlie Adler, who's known for so many characters himself. Like, he was Buster Bunny in the original Tiny Toon Adventures, and then he was Ralph and Bev Bighead in Rocko's Modern Life, and like Cow and Chicken, and the red guy in Cow and Chicken, and Ickis in Real Monsters, another Klasky Csupó show. It's just funny, by the way, on a side note, how Rugrats did a crossover with that series, Real Monsters, and also they did the whole movie with, the Wild Thornberrys. And that just makes me think, honestly, like truly, it would have been so amazing. This, like a theatrical movie of Rocket Power would have honestly been epic. Because I could just picture, like, with having a bigger budget, the animation sequences they could have done of them, like, shredding down the pipes, like, or like the huge ocean waves, and just like the cool stuff they could have done, like twisting in and out of stuff, like with, like, on their skateboards or their bikes, and like just all these huge set pieces they could have done, like going outside of ocean shores. Maybe it could have been like some grand epic adventure, which they kind of did with that New Zealand movie, like TV movie. But I don't know, it just would have been amazing. It could have been something like with Otto having to make a choice, like something that could like lead to him actually, maybe like a huge opportunity for him basically, but then he'd have to like leave, and then he'd be conflicted, and I don't know, maybe something then with maybe Tito finding a lost love or something. Because obviously then toward the end of the show, like in season 4, then they introduce a new love interest for Ray, Noelani, who it turns out was like an old friend and was friends with, in fact, Reggie and Otto's late mother, Danielle. Because like it's never, like the mom's never brought up, you just kind of assume that he's a widower, Ray. So it is sweet though when he finds a new love. But that too, like getting into just a little bit of that territory that's not really explored too much with Otto and Reg, because again, it's more so about just them living their lives, having fun, skating and everything, and surfing. But I appreciate the levels of emotion there in particular, like with Ray basically starts like unintentionally ignoring them to spend more time with Noelani, and then he starts getting more and more overprotective because it's like she's influencing him, and then it turns out she's that way because she has trauma from when her surf partner had tragically died in a surfing accident. And then she mentions how she was also friends with Danielle, Danny as she calls her. And there's a funny part though when Otto's like, Raymundo ditched us to hang out with some strange woman who made him forget what sand is. Like, I don't know, just certain lines that like made me crack up. I was like, oh man, poor Otto. But then it's a rare perceptive moment for Twister in particular, like when they're both like pacing back and forth and they're upset. It's like Raymundo's being totally lame now, hanging out with Noah Lamey. Like, they're both like ticked off by it. Noah Lamo, as they call her. And then Twister just goes, he says something like, oh, you guys should maybe try to get to know her. She should maybe be your new mom someday. And then they both stop. They're like, what? I'm like, oh gosh. It was just honestly really, really touching though, in particular when they end up like going out on the waves, even though he told them not to. And then of course the waves are too huge. They end up like in serious danger. He goes to rescue them, and like the water getting higher. And then Noelani faces her fears and saves every single one of them. And then afterward, Ray's having a heart-to-heart with Reggie and Otto and saying, I'm sorry, I was ignoring you guys. And, I love you two more than anything in the world. And I know things may be different with Noelani around, but you trust me, right? So just give her a chance. I was just like, oh, stop. I'm getting emotional. This is too sweet. It just is. They kind of moved fast, though, because then, by the end of that, it's another TV movie, The Island of the Menehune. Then by the end of it, because he had unintentionally been ignoring Tito, too, and then, he apologized, and he says, will you be the best man at my wedding? And, evidently the series finale, the big day, when they're going to get married, and then, of course, the wedding then gets moved up to the day when Otto is super excited for the new zero gravity zone skate park to open. So, of course, it's those two things, on the same day. They're trying to, change the wedding dates. And by then, they had thankfully come around to Noelani, but then, there's still, under the surface, some kind of, unresolved feelings about, their dad remarrying and, in particular, Reggie, missing her mom and how this woman isn't going to replace her mom. Because then at one point she just kind of explodes saying, that woman's not my mom. She'll never be my mom. And I was like, oh gosh, this is so sad. It's just, but I appreciate kind of those moments, more emotional depth that kind of just adds more layers to the characters, makes them feel that much more realistic. Because then afterwards, when Noelani overhears Reggie and Otto saying how, it's well, we don't want the wedding to happen anyway, basically. And then so, they end up calling off the wedding, and then Reggie feels bad about it. Then Tito says the wedding isn't happening, and she overheard you saying that, you're not ready for a new stepmom. And so then, of course, they're competing in that contest at the new zero gravity place because Otto wants to be able to hang out with another one of his idols, Shaun White, if he wins. And then, Reggie races to the place. She's like, Otto, we gotta stop Noelani. She's getting on a plane, and the wedding was canceled because of what we said. And then he's like, I'm gonna win. I can feel it. And then she's, disappointed, walking away. And then, of course, he's, makes the right decision. He's like, oh, let's do this. And then you see, them racing through. I'm like, oh, you go, Otto. You're the best, man. You're a good kid. And one by one, poor Sam gets wiped out, and then Twister wipes out, and then they're like, you okay, Twister? Yeah, you guys, soldier on. Aw, Twister, so cute. But then, they apologize to her, and they're both we're sorry, and I'm actually excited for you to be my new stepmom. And Reggie's like, yeah, me too. It's very, very sweet. I don't know. I just really liked all that. It was very cute. I was like, oh, stop. And then the wedding itself, because, her mom, I guess, Momi, was kind of taking everything over and stressing everyone out. And then Noelani just says, well, we're going to do things nice and simple the way we wanted in the first place. And then they just riding in on waves. And it's very cute. The nice little beach wedding, and they get married. It's very adorable. It's very wholesome. Too cute. Too cute. I love it. So, a new Rocket to the Rocket clan. It's very sweet. But and I hadn't seen it before, but so I liked that as a series finale too. But again, it would have been interesting, just age them up a little bit, and maybe Ray and Noelani would have been having another kid. Who knows? And then maybe I could see Tito then having a love interest, maybe someone who has a daughter or something, say, and then if they're in the same class as Sam and Reggie, because Sam was the same age as Otto and Twister, but then because he's so smart, he's a grade ahead, so he's in the same grade as Reggie. So then maybe if Tito got a new stepdaughter or something, she could have been a love interest for Sam. But I mean, mostly though, what I really love is just at the core of it, just four friends having fun. And what matters is it doesn't necessarily matter your skill level, because obviously arguably Otto, no duh, Otto is the most skilled of the four of them, and to the point where he's, got an ego on him a little bit. Really the only other skateboarding cartoon character that I can think of off the top of my head anyway is, of course, Bart Simpson, but even that's not the staple of his character. This, it's again, Otto eats, breathes, and sleeps skateboarding in particular. But what I appreciate is that though he is amazing most of the time, he still does wipe out occasionally too, or beef it, as they say, there's that episode when they're on they're snowboarding, and then they go somewhere they're not supposed to, of course, taking it too far, and then he ends up breaking his leg, really injuring himself. And that too, again, like the voice acting to me stood out because like he sounds like he's in such distress. I was like, ooh, damn, like he really conveys that well, the voice actor Joseph Ashton. And I remembered his voice is distinct because then I remembered in hindsight at the time watching Hey Arnold that he voiced Iggy in that infamous episode of Hey Arnold. Arnold betrays Iggy, which is like considered one of the worst episodes of Hey Arnold, even though personally I don't hate that episode. I mean, I think there are episodes of Hey Arnold that are weaker than that one, but whatever. But so then when Otto breaks his leg and it's like, oh damn, and then the following episode when Twister's like, are you gonna like cry again? It's like, I don't want to see you cry. And then like Sam says, me neither, it was gross. Like, oh god. He's like, I wasn't crying. Like, because there was another episode when Twister thinks, or like Lars tricks Twister into thinking he's being like going to be sent away to live with his aunt Cleotilda. And then like they're all upset about it. Like Otto's upset, and then it turns out it was just a misunderstanding. And then it's like, oh good, so Otto, like it's okay, you could stop crying. He's like, I'm not crying. Like, oh, he really is a softie deep down, Otto. It's very cute. It's adorable. So like what I'm getting at though is I appreciate that like Otto Rocket, he's like a really skilled skater, but he messes up too, and then he just keeps at it though, and he's only gonna get better and better. Like same with Sammy, like every time he's excited that he's improving with his skating and stuff like that. I like stuff like that. It's just sweet, like seeing how they've improved and only keep getting better. But I do just really love Twister. What I didn't remember either is that if anything they kind of rag on Twister even more than they do with Sam, because Twister, like when he unintentionally messes up stuff, like when he accidentally misplaces, like he loses his camera when they have to do a video project and they're at like the aquarium and then they're trying to find it, and like Sammy's wearing like that penguin poncho, and I was like, oh my god, that's so adorable. I remember that, the penguin poncho, it's so cute. But poor Twister, and they end up finding it. But there's another great line when Otto's trying to figure out how to make Reggie's birthday party not totally lame, and then he says, I keep thinking but nothing happens, and then like I keep trying to think but nothing happens, and then Twister says, welcome to my world. I was like, oh my goodness, gosh. There's that episode also when Sammy finds a really cool shell and turns out to be like a lucky shell, and they all want to use it for their own advantage to help them out with stuff. And then afterward, Tito's saying, little cousins, you had the magic in you all along, because it was all about like really concentrating and focusing on what you wanted. And then like even Twister aces his spelling test and stuff. But like when he's like, oh, thank God for this shell, and he kisses it, and then Sam's like, well, hey, what about the guy who found it? And he's like, I'm not kissing you. I was like, oh my goodness, such funny stuff. There was like another funny part too when in that episode, Reggie's big beach break, which I thought I didn't really remember it, but then I remembered the part with like that's like a whole spring break episode, and then Reggie's kind of like rising to fame all of a sudden because like she's on TV and interviewing people, and then Otto wants the spotlight to be able to do the 009, like some new skateboard move, but then like she freaks out because she doesn't want the spotlight to go off of her, and then of course she makes it up to him and he gets to do the trick and he crushes it, of course. But I remember the thing with like the hot burgers, like with the hot dogs and the hamburger buns that Tito just like inadvertently invents. But with that one, like there's a part when Otto's like, dude, hold my buns. And then he's like, I don't care if we are friends. I'm not doing that. He's like, I mean, these hot dog buns. It's like so dumb. The like dynamic with Twister and Sam is so great too, because like you got like the smart one and the dumb one. And in that one, they're trying to like get the attention of like the singer who's there, Shafika, who's kind of like Emeka from All Grown Up. But there's also a funny moment in that episode I forgot to mention in that spring break episode. Well, it made me laugh. I don't know. It wasn't really that funny, but for whatever reason, it made me burst out laughing, which was a part where Tito gives Sam and Twister some advice using one of his classic ancient Hawaiian proverbs, and then Twister takes it literally and says something to the extent of, wait, so the guy was trying to farm on a volcano? Like something dumb, whatever. And then Sam just takes his hat and turns it forward. That made me burst out laughing. I had to like go back and watch it again. It was that funny to me. I was like, oh God, Twister, you're so dumb. I love it. It's so funny. But It's just one of those visual things of like, you numbskull, like, you dummy. Just instead of him saying that, like, get it together, man. I loved it. Again, that dynamic in particular, such comedic gold right there with those two, I love it. It's just fantastic. And honestly, Twister is my favorite because, like, really all the Twister-centric episodes, I'm just a big fan of those in particular. Like, there's another classic one where Twister loses his hat. And, like, anytime a character loses their hat, case in point, of course, the classic episode from Hey Arnold from season 1, Arnold's hat, when he loses his hat, and then Helga finds it, but then, like, he's not himself. Similarly with this, when Twister loses his hat on the roller coaster, and then he has, like, a whole identity crisis for Twister, and then, of course, he ends up reuniting with it, but it's so endearing. Also, another episode I wanted to mention was when his little cousin Scotty comes to town. He's, like, so enamored with Twister, like, looking up to him, and then he hates Lars, and he's so cute, the kid. But then, when Scotty's trying to, like, win him that spider ring, and then Twister is, like, freaking out, like, he lost little Scotty. So it's, like, a glimpse of how he would be as an older brother. But, like, his whole family dynamic is great, too, because, again, the parents, they feel so realistic. His dad, in fact, I recognize the voice. He was voiced by Carlos Alazraqui. And there's, like, a great scene where they're at the dinner table, like, bickering, Lars and Twister, and then the mom is just like, boys, what did I say about threatening each other at breakfast? And I'm like, oh gosh, this is so funny. Realistic, familial moments like that, bringing me so much joy. Another episode I wanted to mention, this is like the jumping around portion, as I'm adding more stuff to this episode when I go back to edit this. But, I jump around all the time, as you know by now. But I wanted to mention the episode where Otto then becomes, like, he wipes out on a big wave, and then all of a sudden he starts freaking out about everything, and, like, he can't skate, and he can't rollerblade, like, he's scared, basically. And then Twister freaks out. He's like, oh man, he is scared. Like, when, like, Otto makes an excuse that he can't come down because he has homework. So that's, like, when Twister realizes. So I've said this before. I love when, generally speaking, when characters who are brave then have moments of fear. So in this case with Otto. And then Sam, of course, the typically scared character, when he reassures Otto, saying, like, it's okay, you just got to take it little by little, like, having those nightmares. And then Otto's like, you have them too? I'm not scared, stuff like that. And then, of course, Reggie breaks him out of it by saying, oh, like, you're turning down a challenge, Rocket Boy? Like, she knows how to help out her brother. So that's a really great scene. And again, because I can't help pointing out the Otto-Reggie brother-sister moments, there was another line I wanted to mention from that Island of the Menehune TV movie. Before they go to, like, surf on those huge waves and they all end up endangered, as in Otto, Reggie, and then Ray when he tries to save them, and then Noelani ends up saving all of them. It's a really impactful scene because she's facing her own fears and showing how much she cares about not only Ray, but his children, the most important thing in his life. But there's a great line from Otto where he says, like, Reggie just makes a decision saying, we're going to go ride those waves, Rocket Boy. And then he says, are you sure you are the older responsible one? And then she's like, yeah, and we're going to do it anyway. He's like, okay, Rocket Girl, let's do it. And that's a great line to me. It just stands out to me because I love when shows call attention to things that are otherwise already established. Like, as in, you don't have to say that, like, Otto looks up to Reggie as, like, the older responsible one. You just know that. That's just something that's established in the show. And yet, so, like, when he draws attention to it, that to me is just, like, a really sweet moment. It's just, like, a really sweet thing. Because another nice brother-sister moment is, in another episode I hadn't seen before, was when, like, they all get lost somewhere, like, when they're out, like, on vacation somewhere, and because they do end up in danger quite a bit, to be fair, like, but Twister, like, in that episode, Twister is obsessed with, like, this wilderness survival show from his childhood, and that's, like, helping him out, like, as they're on their own. Like, he just keeps referencing that, and they're like, Twister, enough with that, like, gopher show, whatever it was. And then at some point, because, like, Otto's injured, and, like, they're all, like, one by one, like, it's, like, brutal. But then Otto says to Reg, if I don't make it, I want you to have all my boards and my music collection. And she's like, oh, that's sweet, Rocket Boy, except one problem. I'm about to be toast, too. He's like, oh, right. It's just sweet that he thinks of Reggie, the first thing he says. Like, you can have all my stuff. It's cute. But again, like, the lingo on this show is so amazing. Because another recurring exchange on this show is later, much, like a whole sarcastic thing. It's too good. It's just so funny. My goodness. By the way, a couple of other things I just wanted to mention about this show. First off, the theme song. It absolutely slaps, composed by the Wipeouters. And what's interesting, something I just found out, when doing research, which again, I'm amazed how little there is in terms of behind the scenes stuff. That just gives me all the more reason to interview someone, hopefully I can interview someone who worked on this show and just get some more behind the scenes info, because I'm just so curious now. But something I did learn though is that all of those shots where like the colors are like wonkier and like the art is wonkier, and just go back and rewatch the theme song if you don't recall. But like, for example, one is when Otto is snowboarding and like you distinctly see he has an earring, which is not in the show at all, and that stood out to me as a kid. I was like, it's clearly Otto, but then wonky, weirder art style. But anyway, all of those shots are in fact from the unaired pilot for this show. That does remind me too, the one behind the scene thing about this show that I do distinctly remember that they would air at the time it was airing, like the commercial, like when the show was airing obviously, is, I couldn't even find it though, I tried to, but so the commercial was just, it was like this voiceover guy as if he was like a top secret spy giving you information about the show. And what he says is, if you ever wonder about the N on Sam's shirt, that's because he originally was from New York, but then they changed it to Kansas, and then the N stayed anyway, just as an Easter egg. Except, that's just funny to me, because if it's still N on his shirt, why didn't they just make it like Nebraska then? But whatever. So that's the one random thing that I remember from the early 2000s when this show was airing. Also, one other classic line I wanted to mention from Sammy when he says, increasingly distraught, they got sand in the potato salad. Poor Sammy. That's too funny. And he eats it anyway, though, so it all worked out. Oh, gosh. And so the other thing I just want to mention, though, separate from the show itself, but I just have to admit that I low-key, not so low-key kind of ship Reggie and Twister. And I just ship them, and mostly because just the idea of, so say if they were older and like Reggie and Twister had kissed or something, and then Otto finding out about it, the comedic potential of that would just be incredible. Him freaking out about his best friend and his sister, kind of like Ross and, with Chandler and Monica. But I also, like, speaking of Otto, I also low-key kind of ship Otto and Cleo, Twister's cousin Cleo, because there's that one episode when she is in town at Ocean Shores, and then Otto gets jealous because like she's basically taking over the group, and he's mostly jealous because she's hanging out with Reggie, and then he's like, but we're Team Rocket, so like he's jealous that like his sister's hanging out with her, which I was like, oh, Otto is so cute, he's just such a cute little brother. I just, again, like the brother-sister dynamic just warms my heart. But at the end, like when they're surfing, and like they all wipe out except for Otto and Cleo, and then like he follows her lead, like doing the ballet moves, and they're under the water, and he just gives her that look, like, the half-lidded look. And so like it's not really meant to be, romantic, but the subtext, you can kind of like read it that way. And I was like, oh, I can kind of see that. That would be cute. I just have to say, with Ray, it's cute that who he ends up with, like with Noelani and all that. That's very cute. But early on, there's a hint of a flirty vibe between him and Shirley, the cop. Just like the moment of, hey, Cheryl, and hey, Big Ray. It just could have been something cute. But, obviously Noelani then was his second soulmate besides their mom. Whatever. Again, like, whatever, because it's just a cartoon and, like, it's long since ended. But overall, again, I just love the spirit of this show. That as long as you are having fun, doing what you love doing, that's all that matters. Like, whether it's sports, whether it's anything, really. But again, like, the dedication to sports, it's very inspiring, and it's really, really cool. And so, props to to the writers, the voice actors, and the animators. It's a really, really great show. Again, I just genuinely appreciate it so much more now compared to when I watched it as a kid. Really wholesome, really sweet. Rocket Boy and Rocket Girl are awesome. Twister's so funny. I love Twister. Sammy's a sweetheart. They're all fantastic. Ray is an amazing dad. Tito's the best. It's just so sweet. It's a wonderful, wonderful show. And once again, woogity, 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 woogity. And with that, that's going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. Check out storytellingsaga.com. And as always, feel free to send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by emailing me at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Until next time, thank you for listening. And remember, write what you love.
Csupó. Will you please grow a brain?